Healing from a toxic relationship is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It's not just about getting over someone, it's about untangling yourself from the emotional chaos, the self-doubt, and the patterns that kept you stuck. But here's the good news. Healing is possible, and it happens in stages. Each stage brings its own challenges and breakthroughs, and while the journey isn't linear, it's worth it. Let's walk through the first 4 stages of healing from a toxic relationship. The first stage of healing is denial. This is where you might convince yourself that the relationship wasn't that bad. You might downplay the hurtful things they said or did, or tell yourself, they didn't mean it, or it's not a big deal. Denial is a protective mechanism. It shields you from the pain of facing the truth. For example, you might find yourself reminiscing about the good times and ignoring the red flags that were always there. This stage works differently for everyone. For some, denial is a brief pause before reality sets in. For others, it can last months or even years, especially if the toxic relationship was deeply intertwined with your sense of self or if you're afraid of being alone. Why is this stage helpful? It gives your mind time to process the enormity of what you've been through, but staying in denial too long can keep you stuck. The key is to gently challenge your own narrative. Ask yourself, if my best friend told me this story, what would I say to them? Once denial fades, anger often takes its place. This is the stage where you finally allow yourself to feel the full weight of what happened. You might feel furious at your ex for how they treated you, or even angry at yourself for staying as long as you did. For example, you might replay arguments in your head, thinking of all the things you wish you'd said or done differently. Anger can be uncomfortable, but it's a necessary part of healing. It's your mind's way of saying, what happened to me wasn't okay. For some, this stage feels empowering. It's a sign that you're starting to reclaim your self-worth. For others, anger can feel overwhelming, especially if you've been taught to suppress your emotions. Why does this stage work better for some and not others? If you've spent years bottling up your feelings, anger might feel like a tidal wave. But if you can channel it constructively, through journaling, exercise, or therapy, it can be a powerful catalyst for change. Just remember, anger is a stage, not a destination. The goal isn't to stay angry forever, but to use that energy to move forward. After anger comes bargaining. This is the stage where you might find yourself thinking, what if I had done things differently? Or maybe if I just try harder, they'll change. Bargaining is your mind's attempt to regain control, to rewrite the past or fix what's broken. For example, you might replay scenarios in your head, imagining how things could have gone if you just said the right thing or been a better partner. This stage can be particularly tough for people who struggle with self-blame. If you've been conditioned to believe that you're the problem, bargaining can feel like a way to fix yourself or the relationship. But the truth is, no amount of bargaining can change someone else's behavior. Why is this stage helpful? It forces you to confront the reality that you can't control everything. For some, this realization is freeing. For others, it can feel like a loss of hope. The key is to remind yourself that healing isn't about fixing the past. It's about building a better future. The fourth stage is depression. This is where the weight of everything you've been through finally hits you. You might feel exhausted, empty, or hopeless. For example, you might struggle to get out of bed, cancel plans with friends, or feel like you'll never be happy again. Depression isn't just sadness. It's a deep sense of loss. You're grieving the relationship, the person you thought they were, and the future you thought you'd have. This stage can feel endless, but it's a crucial part of healing. It's your mind's way of processing the pain and letting go. For some, depression is a quiet, introspective time. For others, it can feel overwhelming, especially if you're dealing with it alone. Why does this stage work better for some and not others? If you have a strong support system or healthy coping mechanisms, you might move through this stage more easily. But if you're isolated or struggling with unresolved trauma, it can feel like you're stuck in quicksand. The key is to be gentle with yourself and seek help if you need it. Remember, this stage is temporary, and it's okay to not be okay. The fifth stage is acceptance. This is where you finally stop fighting the reality of what happened and begin to see the relationship for what it truly was: toxic. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with what happened, it means you're no longer denying it, bargaining with it, or drowning in anger or sadness. For example, you might catch yourself thinking, "They were never going to change," or "This wasn't my fault," and actually believe it. This stage is where clarity begins to replace chaos. You might start to recognize patterns in the relationship, like how your boundaries were ignored or how love was conditional. For some, acceptance feels like relief, a weight lifted off their shoulders. For others, it can feel bittersweet, especially if you still care about the person or grieve the potential of what the relationship could have been. Why is this stage helpful? Acceptance is the foundation of healing. It allows you to stop wasting energy on what-ifs and start focusing on what's next. However, acceptance can be harder for people who struggle with black and white thinking. If you're someone who needs closure, you might resist this stage until you feel you've gotten answers. But true closure comes from within, not from the person who hurt you. Stage 6 is rebuilding. Now that you've accepted the reality of the relationship, it's time to rebuild your life and yourself. This stage is about rediscovering who you are outside of the toxicity. For example, you might reconnect with old hobbies, set new boundaries, or finally pursue goals you put on hold. Rebuilding is empowering, but it's also messy. You might feel like you're starting from scratch, especially if the relationship eroded your confidence. For instance, saying no to people might feel terrifying at first, or you might feel guilty for prioritizing your own needs. This stage works beautifully for people who thrive on independence, but it can be daunting for those who fear being alone. Why is this stage helpful? Rebuilding teaches you to trust yourself again. Every small step, whether it's cooking a meal for one or joining a new social group, is proof that you're capable of creating a life that honors you. However, progress isn't linear. Some days you'll feel unstoppable. Other days, you'll doubt everything. That's normal. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about showing up for yourself, even when it's hard. The final stage is growth. This is where you begin to see the toxic relationship not just as a source of pain, but as a catalyst for transformation. Growth means recognizing the lessons you've learned, like red flags to avoid in the future or the importance of trusting your gut. For example, you might realize you're now quicker to walk away from disrespect, or you've developed a deeper sense of empathy for others going through similar struggles. Growth is deeply personal. For some, it looks like thriving in a healthy new relationship. For others, it's finding peace in solitude. This stage works best for those who are ready to reframe their story, but it can feel out of reach for people still grappling with shame or self-blame. Why is this stage helpful? Growth proves that healing is possible. It's a reminder that you're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by how you rise after the fall. However, growth doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. Triggers might resurface, and that's okay. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about building resilience for the future. Healing from a toxic relationship isn't about reaching a finish line, it's about learning to walk a new path. Some days you'll stumble, other days you'll run, but every step forward is a victory. Remember, you are not broken, you are a work in progress, and that's okay.